Sure. So I was born and grew up in Puerto Rico until I was six. Then I moved to Miami. Um, in Puerto Rico, as very little, I would altar serve, but like all kids, you're just there for the altar serve. I remember that the priest, since we couldn't receive communion, we would have unconsecrated hosts, and at the end of Mass, we would just gather around him, and he would give us unconsecrated hosts. I remember distinctly after Sunday Mass, we would go to my grandparents' house and there with the neighbors, eat bread with butter, coffee, eggs while watching the original Wonder Woman show. Um, then moved to Miami. Growing up, I wasn't really that into the faith. I'd go to Sunday Mass, I do everything, but it was more just going through the motions, not really that participatory. I know that catechism in recent years has not been that good. Mine wasn't good. When I was receiving confirmation, I didn't know what a sacrament was or that there were seven of them. But I do remember that once we were playing a game of you move to this side of the room for yes, this side of the room for no, we were asked, oh, do you have to go to Mass on Sundays in order to be a Catholic? And I was one of the only ones that went to the side that said yes, which I didn't know why I thought that, but and then another distinctive mark, which I still remember this from my confirmation classes, was we had a priest talk to us, told us, once I was like you, I wasn't thinking of the priesthood or anything until a priest told me that one of you is going to be a priest, and he thought, "Psst, that's not going to happen to me." And as he was telling us this story, I was thinking, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not thinking of any of that. So I find it ironic I'm here now. Hopefully, the story can continue with that. High school was when I really did have my conversion. In 10th grade, yeah, in 10th grade, there was this girl I wanted to date, but she was very into the Baptist faith. So just to get the girl, I decided, okay, I'll be Protestant, whatever. But then I started reading the Bible and history and praying, and it started being more for me instead of her. And then there was just one day where I just thought this doesn't make sense unless you're Catholic. There were so many questions I had that couldn't be answered through any Protestant denomination. So I said to God one day, okay, here's the deal. I'll go to confession. If I feel something, then the Catholic Church is real and I'll go. It's just that foot. I haven't even started speaking and I already start crying and I'm already sold. After confessing to the priest, I'm expecting him to say, reprimand me or something, but instead he just smiles and gives me absolution. So growing up, that's been my faith journey. So at first, I didn't know about the Capuchins or religious life. I was still with my girlfriend at the end of 10th grade, but then we kind of broke it off for a bit, and by this point, I was really like excited on fire with the faith. So I asked God in prayer, okay, so what's next for me? What do I do? I'm ready to do anything. And the same voice I was hearing it tell me go back to the church, this time around I hear be a priest. And I said no to it. I decided to keep running away from it. I got back with my girlfriend eventually, but it's a voice that just kept coming back stronger to the point where she was very anti-Catholic but tolerated me. And all of a sudden, randomly, she just tells me, I think I'm preventing God from letting you be a priest. And that shocked her and that shocked me. Then in 2020, we broke it off and I decided to take it more seriously, but I, the diocesan priesthood, it felt like a lot was missing for me that I wanted. So I come across this friar, Father Casey, from the OFMs, and I see that he's wearing the Franciscan habit. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I've never seen them before. I've known about Saint Francis since he was my confirmation saint. So I started looking more into Saint Francis' life, fall in love with his life, and then look at the OFMs, and I see, okay, so that's something that I wanted, a sense of community. Because I kept reading the Acts of the Apostles on how they lived in community, they lived in communal poverty, and then they would pray but then minister. And I found that with the Franciscans, but something was missing for me too from the OFMs. So I started looking at Franciscan saints and come across Padre Pio. And reading about his life, what I loved about it was not the miracles, but I fell in love with his prayer life and the way he celebrated Mass. So then I see that he's OFM Capuchin. I'm like, oh, what are the Capuchins? So I look into the Capuchins and it's okay, they're a little more austere on the poverty. They have the community aspect, which I like in the ministry, but then they have the life of contemplation. And that's what was missing that I didn't know that I was looking for, contemplation. Where yes, I have the poverty in the community I've been looking for, but then what I didn't know I was looking for was the contemplation. So I owe it to Padre Pio of finding out about the Capuchins. And from there on, I'm like, okay, I'm in my last year of high school. Let me contact the vocations director. They didn't know that provinces were a thing, so I originally contacted St. Conrad's, and then they referred me to my province, which is the Sacred Stigmata province. So since the Sacred Stigmata province's vocation director is Father Francisco, so with Father Francisco, I wanted to apply right out of high school and was told to wait. Also, I already had college lined up for me and some scholarships. So I listened, went through college, and then was able to apply at the end of college. I lived in a friary in Delaware for a couple months before going to the postulancy program here. Well, first I'd like to start out with the struggles and then go into the blessings. With struggles, definitely, I mean, it's both the blessing and the struggle, but the community life. Iron sharpens iron. So there's gonna be some days where maybe a particular brother is annoying you, and it's not that they're doing it on purpose. It's the issue with you. Maybe the way they hold their fork or something just drives you crazy. Or maybe a brother might be particular about a certain a certain thing, and having to live with that and see how to practice gospel charity here, whether it actually might be the brother's fault or it might be your fault. Usually it's your fault. But I think that's also the source of blessing too, because it also promotes holiness. I have to learn how to live with other people that think differently from me, act differently from me, and yet we're called to be brothers and to live in this community, living the gospel life. Not only that, but also ministering together. Usually we go out two by two to ministries, and sometimes the personalities are different. I'm with one of the older postulants, so I'm in my 20s. The brother I minister with is in his 40s, so there's also an age difference there, but it's beautiful because we both see things in different ways, so we're able to complement each other rather than fight. Um, Prayer life is such a blessing here. We do community prayer, but also do private and personal prayer. We have a lot of time for that. We have meals in community. We clean the friary together. We cook together. A lot of things are done in common, but we also have time to ourselves in which we can take up either extra studies or work on a hobby. So the blessings do definitely outweigh the negatives. Sometimes there's hard situations around here. Friaries tend to be in poorer neighborhoods, so sometimes there could be violence, there could be gunshots, but it's who we're called to minister with and who we're called to be with. Even within our own ministries, we tend to minister to the poor and the marginalized. So there's a lot of difficult situations where either in the soup kitchens, someone may not be on medication, so they're extra grouchy and they might say some things that they don't mean. Or in the school ministry with kids, a lot of them come from very poor income families. So you see that there are some resources that they do not have, and you have to work with that. But besides that in ministry, it's also such a blessing because you see how thankful they are towards you. we don't get paid for this. We do it out of charity, and some days are harder than others, but they know and they understand that we struggle sometimes, and they really appreciate. And there will be moments of grace where they'll just look at you and just thank you for the ministry that you're doing. My ministry portion, I'm at a school. I work with elementary kids, usually with kids that are immigrants that just came to the country and either don't speak English at all or speak very little. Some of them are very behind in their grade level. They can't read, they can't write. Um, their math skills are very basic. They can't count all the way to 100 either. So there is a struggle with that. Most of them tend to be from Mexico, but there are some Venezuelans and some from Dominica Republic. But these kids are, they try a lot. Their education wasn't necessarily the best in their country either, especially with those that are torn by dictatorships. But over here, at least I'm happy that they have the opportunity to have a better education. It's a struggle with them because they are from poor income families, but you can see that their family's doing all they can for them to have a better education and a better life. So with Capuchin life and calling on doing things, at least with me, because there's so many things in the order, I kind of want to do a little bit of everything. Um, but the one that I've always felt very much called to is just to preaching, whether that be preaching retreats or wherever that may take me, but preaching combined with ministry to the poor, where I don't want to just preach. If I'm going to be preaching, I want to then, after stepping off the ambo, go and serve the poor wherever that may be. I think the highlight tends to just be whenever we gather in community for prayers. That tends to be the highlight for me, where I like personal prayer is great, but I've always loved praying with other people and having that sense, especially when we start singing a hymn for the Liturgy of the Hours and how it echoes in the choir, or how we take turns and we have different just functions between each other in either the Mass or Liturgy of the Hours or the Rosary, because to me it also symbolizes just salvation history and God's relationship with us and just the unity of the church, where everyone has a different voice, everyone is a different piece of the body, and yet we are all so connected and so important. And that's when I particularly feel the most closest to the brothers, when we gather together in a community to do prayer, whether that be in the choir in a more formal setting or informal right before classes or right before meals. Well, my advice first off would be, because I wanted to join right out of high school, is to take your time, you know, discern in a very discerning way, because we tend to experience highs and lows in life. And at least I think if, let's say, you're thinking of the Capuchins, to go visit friaries, spend time with the friars, try to see if you can go to ministry with them. At least me, because I'm a big fan of reading, try to read up on the history. CapDocs is a great resource. Try to read the constitutions, the life of Francis, but most importantly, to go and actually visit friars and be with them, because sometimes the way that they're written about, it doesn't compare to what it's like living with the friars, where living with them for me has definitely been a lot better than what's written about them. What's written about them doesn't compare to how they are in person. I would say also, maybe if you're discerning, have a spiritual director. That would be a very good thing to do. But very, very focal point just to pray and to make sure that you're visiting and interacting with friars. Because it's so easy again to get lost in a ideal and not really know what it's really like and be like, oh, that's not really what I signed up for. But yeah, to take your time, because if it really is your calling, then what's gonna be like a couple years compared to the rest of your life. Yeah, something I'd like to add is that definitely it is a tough life. There's gonna be a lot of thankless work that you have to do, and some days you're just like, "Ah, I'm sick of it all." But it is such a blessing despite all of that, because it being tough also makes it all the more worthwhile of what the Capuchins are doing, what they stand for. It's an order with such a rich history, with such strong saints, so many saints, countless saints. And you don't have to be even a priest. Most of the saints are lay brothers. It's an order that has so many different things, so many different characters. You meet one friar, good, you met one friar. You didn't meet the whole Capuchin order. All the friars are so different from each other and they bring something to the table. It's also such a joyous and joyful life. I don't think you can be a Capuchin without a sense of humor. You need it here to survive, but also to survive the friars. But it is a very joyful life and one filled with many blessings, whether one is living with the friars or one is just interacting with the friars. You're always gonna feel that sense of the charism and what they're all about, which is just living the gospel life and being a little brother to the whole world.